So the other day I was thinking about how Sky Strikers and Orcust, or at least Orcust as an engine, have sort of followed a similar path on the Forbidden and Limited list and what people thought and predicted about how good those strategies would be. So with Sky Strikers, the very first hit that any of their actual cards took was Hornet Drones to 1 copy per deck. And when that happened, the deck, or I guess the engine, was being abused in other strategies like Trickstar Sky Strikers and Goki Sky Strikers, and when Hornet Drones went to 1 copy per deck, most people believe that the pure version would still be okay, but you couldn't really splash Sky Strikers in decks anymore because Hornet Drones was so important. Then we got Kagari limited, and when Kagari got limited, people were like, okay, now not only is it difficult to play Sky Strikers as an engine in another deck, but also it's really hard to play the pure version because you don't have nearly as much longevity. Then multi-roll went to 1, because keep in mind here, even with Hornet Drones and Kagari at 1 copy per deck, Sky Strikers continue to top and win YCS after YCS after YCS. With multi-roll at 1 copy per deck, people are like, okay, now the deck really has no longevity, you really can't splash it in anything, and yet the deck continued to see lots of success until right now when Widow Anchor is at 1 copy per deck. But as you guys already know, and as we're going to talk about in today's video, all of these hits don't seem to matter that much because Sky Strikers have still managed to be, both in pure and hybrid variants, one of the most successful archetypes in all of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, but at the very least one of the most successful themes in the last 2 years. And Orcust really follow a similar path here. You have the Rank Up Magic, the very first card that was banned. I know it's not an Orcust card, but it was played alongside the other Orcust cards, and suddenly they no longer can add on that Azathoth on your opponent's main phase, which was a huge deal. And when that got banned, people were like, okay, Orcust are dead. Who's ever going to play that deck anymore? But it still was a top tier contender because it turned out that setting 2 copies of Fogblade was almost as good, obviously not as good, but almost as good as summoning the Azathoth. So then Rusty got banned and people were like, okay, now it's really bad because that 1 Mermaid only gets you to that 1 Crescendo and in Dingirsu, not really that many interruptions. But obviously that wasn't enough because even with both the Rank Up Magic and Rusty banned at the same time, Mermaid, and I know it sounds kind of crazy in hindsight here because Mermaid really only did get you to 1 negate by itself, that still proved to be too strong because sort of in the same vein as like Salamangreats and a lot of modern decks, the strength of Orcust at the time that Mermaid was legal wasn't so much that it could only end on like a 1 negate or whatever, it's that you could end on that 1 negate and set up so many other plays off of any 2 monsters in your deck with different names. Very consistent, very powerful, and it was a very good strategy for a lot of events. So then Mermaid got banned and people were like, okay, now Orcusts are dead. You know, we don't have the Rank Up Magic, you can't make Azathoth on your opponent's turn. We don't have the Rusty, you no longer end on 2 Fogblades for free. We don't have the Mermaid, so you have to actually play pure Orcust or Orcust with a lot of other Orcust cards like the new draw spell that people started playing. But even with all 3 of those very crucial and at one point people thought necessary parts of the Orcust deck banned, the deck still is the top strategy of this format and last format for that matter. And I'm going to show you a couple of pie charts here, and I didn't make these come from the Carlancho store sort of Facebook page. They post a lot of cool deck lists as well as these pie charts. So first, let's take a look at the top 32 breakdown from YCS Pasadena, and what you'll notice here is that, hold on a second, there's 50% Orcust representation and 19% Sky Striker. That's pretty crazy considering how many Orcust cards got banned. I know they're not directly Orcust cards, but they are cards that were played in the Orcust strategy, and considering that 4 of the most important Sky Striker cards are all limited. But what was especially worrying about this event in particular is that 6 of the 16 Orcusts that managed to top 32 YCS Pasadena were not pure variants, but rather they were Sky Striker variants. So you had 7 pure variants, 6 Sky Striker variants, 2 Lunalight variants, and 1 Cyber Dragon variant. And while it is kind of cool, it's not just all the same exact deck, the version of the deck that plays Sky Strikers is really, really worrying from a ban list and format perspective. And maybe you could argue that, okay, it was a fluke, you know, people weren't prepared for it, but then just last weekend at YCS Milan, we see a very similar story. So this is what the pie chart for Milan looks like. We have only 13% Sky Strikers in the top 32, but now the Orcust is 53%. Of those 17 Orcusts that managed to top, 9 of them are pure, 7 are Sky Striker variants, and 1 is a Lunalight variant. And I don't want to sound like, although I'm afraid I already am, I don't want to sound like here that I'm just complaining that a top deck exists, because one of the things that I've learned in my many years playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that there always has to be a best deck. But as I kind of talked about a couple weeks ago when I talked about Rising Rampage and Chaos Impact being very lackluster, one of the reasons this feels so so stale and feels so insurmountable is that we have been playing against Sky Striker Engage at 3 copies per deck for almost 2 years straight now, because Sky Strikers in some capacity have always been a competitively viable deck since their very first release. And while Orcust haven't been around nearly as long as Sky Strikers, it all does sort of blend together format after format after format when you have these same 3 strategies, those 2 and then Thunder Dragons, always at the very top tables. And the pure versions and the hybrid decks that have come out of those 3 strategies certainly do all feel different, but at some point it's like, when are we going to move on? And I talked about that in the Rising Rampage video and the Chaos Impact videos, where I was like, it really feels like we haven't had a new archetype that actually was competitively viable in at least 3 sets. It's even more than that if you count the side sets, and that is not healthy for the game. I mean, sure, these decks feel a little bit different. There certainly is innovation. I don't want to say there's not innovation. I don't want to sound like one of those people that says like, oh, you play meta, you're just a sheep, all those decks are the exact same, because it's not true. The decks themselves have changed pretty drastically, but something needs to change with the next ban list, because I am sick of getting engaged. I am sick of getting Dingirsuit. I am sick of getting Galatea and Harp Horde and Widow Anchored and Shark Cannon. These cards have just been around for so long, and it feels like it's been longer than almost any other format in Yu-Gi-Oh! The formats definitely do change, the ban list hits do help, and we have had some cool new cards come out, but overall, I don't know what it's going to take, because what's really scary, and why I'm making this video in the first place, is that if you look at the modern Orcust Sky Striker deck, if you took every single Orcust card besides maybe Galatea, and if you took every single Sky Striker card and you limited every single one in that deck, I'm pretty sure the deck would still be playable, and that's really scary. I realize a common complaint from ex-Yu-Gi-Oh players is that, oh, Konami releases a new deck and then in 3 months or 6 months they ban all the cards, so you buy new cards. And while I understand that people complain about that, I feel like we're at the other end of the spectrum right now. I feel like the decks that are out right now have simply been in the metagame for too long. It is getting too stale. It's crazy to think about that I've been asking for Engage to be limited for over a year at this point. It was like last August when I was like, okay, I think Sky Strikers have had their fun now. We probably should like semi-limit or limit Engage for the future overall health of the game, but it hasn't happened. And while I understand where Konami is coming from, they really like Sky Strikers. They really like Orcust, and we can kind of know that. We can go back and say, okay, maybe it makes sense that they kept giving those 2 decks so many OTS reprints, so many ultimate rares, so many super rares. It's very clear that Konami loves those 2 archetypes and wants them to remain in the metagame. And like I said, from an investment standpoint, sure, if you bought Sky Strikers day 1, you've been able to play the deck for 2 years straight, good for you. And I know that I shouldn't complain about playing the deck for a long time, because I've been playing Altergeist for like 2 years straight as well. Those came out just before Sky Strikers, but just in general, I feel like we need some new blood in the format. We know we need some new cards that actually change the metagame, and I don't know if it's going to take not only releasing new cards, but also banning or limiting a lot of the cards in the Orcust and Sky Striker decks, but something needs to happen, otherwise the format and the game itself is just going to get too boring. And I really do say this as cautiously as possible. I very rarely complain about the format. I feel like you can almost always find some solution to beat the metagame, and I hate when people complain just to get their views out there and get some views and some clicks on YouTube. But I really feel right now, especially looking at these Orcust Sky Striker decks, it's showing that Engage can't stay at 3, that all the Orcust cards can't go untouched. Something needs to happen. Is it limiting all the cards and then releasing a really strong deck? Is that, I mean, that might work, but it might also take like banning something. I think that comes to a really interesting decision, because some people believe on Forbidden and Limited lists you never should just gut a strategy entirely, but I feel like we might be reaching the point here where gutting Sky Strikers or gutting Orcust is the only way to progress the game forward. It's definitely easier to do that with Orcust, because the problem with gutting Sky Strikers is that they're actually still getting more cards. The Sky Striker card is a sneak peek promo for Ignition Assault, the very next core set. They're also getting a new Link 2 monster and a couple other cards, so it's pretty hard to actually just completely gut Sky Strikers when they're still getting new cards. They could do it, they have done it in the past, but it would surprise me a little bit, but they really should. I mean, I think for the overall health of the game, engaging into Engage isn't a very frequent thing, but it just feels unwinnable when your opponent opens more than one copy of Engage or searches more than one copy of Engage. I think limiting Engage might be a step in the right direction that truly does make the pure version of Sky Strikers almost unplayable, which I feel is what Konami is trying to avoid. But in terms of the deck getting splashed into decks like Orcust and any other strategy playing striker cards, I feel like Hornet Drones was not the problem, but Engage has always been the issue. I feel like Konami is currently scrambling right now to figure out how to hit these decks without just killing them entirely. I don't always think that killing a deck off is the right idea. Sometimes it is, and if we really think about how many times Sky Strikers have won events, it is just insane. Truly one of the most powerful decks in history, one of the most powerful engines in history, and Engage might go down as one of the most broken cards ever released. No, it is not Pot of Greed. I know I hear a lot of people say that because I know it adds a card and draws a card, and it's a crazy +1 and you can recycle it, but Pot of Greed can be played in a lot of other decks that Engage simply can't be played in, because if Pot of Greed was legal right now, it would be in every single deck, where Engage obviously is not in every single deck. People still find reasons not to play that card, usually just deck space, but yes, Engage is super strong on the level of crazy cards in this game's past, and I think that this card being allowed at 3 copies per deck is completely crazy at this point. People have had 2 years to play with 3 copies of Engage. I don't think they need any more time. I think Konami is going to start finding that if they don't start releasing really good archetypes in the upcoming packs, or if they don't hit the Orcust cards or the Sky Striker cards, we're going to have some people not so happy about the next format. You want to really roll in 2020 with like a lot of excitement, and I think most people agree it's not very exciting watching your opponent activate Engage after Engage after Engage, especially in a complicated game state. Just the sheer amount of advantage you can get from a single Sky Striker Ace Ray is absolutely insane, even for 2019-2020, and I think Konami really needs to do a good balancing act here of releasing strong new cards and hitting some of the older cards. People have had a chance to play with Orcust, they've had a chance to play with Thunder, they've had a chance to play with Sky Strikers. Maybe let's let some new decks into the metagame, and Konami really has to try to do that by releasing stronger cards. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's brainstorming video, sort of a discussion video. Let me know in the comment section below what you think Konami could do to make the format even better. I hate complaining because the last couple formats, last like 3 or 4 formats, have been so balanced. There's been such a good mix of strong meta strategies and also strong rogue contenders. But I feel like right now, especially looking at those 2 pie charts, we're reaching a point where those rogue decks are being slowly but surely pushed out of the meta. And if it were to continue with all these cards unlimited or at least not banned, I think we would just see more and more people only playing Orcust Sky Strikers because the deck is just so strong compared to everything else. Anyway though, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.